Hello, crafty friends. Welcome to Stamp and Create with Beth. I'm Beth. Today, I want to show you how to make this tri-fold Christmas card with some retired products from my stash. And I'm going to be pairing it with a new product that you can still get. So, I'm going to go through really quickly what I used. This is the product that you can get in my online store. It's Textured Notes dies. I used die number 1 and die number 2 for my panels. And I stamped with Christmas Barn, Peaceful Evergreens, the October 2024 Paper Pumpkin, and my other greeting came from this Classic Cloche. So all of those are retired, but feel free to use whatever you have in your stash to make this tri-fold card. Okay, so the colors I used for this one is, this is the new cloud cover. Our ink pad had an issue, so you can make your own spot with the refill, or you can buy one of the spot assortments. I use Secret Sea and Basic Gray. And to color my images, I used Stampin Blends. I used Cherry Cobbler, Cloud Cover, Smoky Slate, and Light Secret Sea. And the Natural Tones 700, which is medium light. So let's get started here. I have a packet with everything pre-cut. There is one thing that I will need to die cut, and we'll do that when I get there. So the parts that you'll need to make the tri-fold card are 3 panels. I used the largest die of that Textured Notes, and then I have 2 connector pieces. These are 4.5 inches by 2, and you score it at 1, so it folds in half. Those will connect our panels together. And then I have these to stamp on. These are the second largest of the Textured Notes, and I have 4 of these. So my back panel has 1 layer. My middle has 1 layer, and the front has 2 layers. So this piece right here is stamped, and then a partial die cut is done. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's get to stamping. Okay. I stamped all of my images in Basic Gray. I need my barn, and I need this. If you don't have a glass mat or a good surface, don't forget to use the Stampin' Pierce mat or a foam mat with your photopolymer stamp so that you can get a nice clear image. Now, on my card, I did ink up my barn, but I didn't ink the bottom part. I don't want all those little lines, so I just let the stamp hang off the ink pad there. And bring in another scrap. I stamped it off my page a little bit, so it wasn't right in the center. That's good. Okay. And then I'm going to try to clean as I go, so please bear with me. You can always fast forward. We're going to mask this and stamp the trees behind it. The middle piece will have all trees. And oops, then we need to do this layer. So the back layer has trees on it, and the front layer will have this little sled. And I'm doing it about halfway. And that's it for the basic gray ink. Now these I will color with my blends, but let's go ahead and finish stamping our trees. So I used some of the masking paper, and I made a mask already of the barn. You just stamp it and then cut it very, very close to the line, or right inside the line. You want to make sure that what you're stamping doesn't have a white line between it and what you're masking. And then we will stamp some trees on these 3 pieces. And I used the trees from the Peaceful Evergreens. I used this one, and then the smaller one, and this set of trees here. Now I did do cloud cover, but I did a stamping and then I inked and stamped off. Okay, so behind this barn, I did a mix of trees. So I stamped and stamped off. So stamp, and then the material's a little bit different in the spots. So I like to re-ink and stamp off and then stamp again on my project. And then let's use this bigger tree. So for this project, I shopped my stash and I used some things that I love using, especially for winter cards. I know it's summer right now, but this is in honor of Christmas in July. And I don't need to ink the full tree because it's not going to be showing anyway. So I'm just filling that in back there, trying to vary the heights a little bit. And then when we take this mask off, the trees will appear right behind our barn. And because I kept my mask really tight to that line, there's no white space there. Okay. And then I did the same thing for the middle. So I just stamped the trees in both first generation, which is inking and stamping, and second generation, which is inking, stamping off, and then stamping. And leave room for your greeting down there. So a little below halfway. So I just did about the same there. And then I used the bigger tree. So now I'm just going to fill it in with stamped off images. So we have our little winter forest. Go. Okay, and then for our front panel, this one is going to get a couple of big trees and then this cluster here. So I did about 3, and then we'll do some stamped off. So you can use any trees that you have. You could even make this a fall card or a summer card by changing up the colors. I'm going to use this small tree. Okay, so there we have our trees, and we're ready to color and die cut. And when I'm all done, I will stamp the greetings. I like to get all of this done before I stamp that. Okay. So if you do not want to watch the coloring, you can go ahead and skip ahead to the card assembly. If you want to watch me color, I'm going to finish these up with my blends. So I'm going in with some cherry cobbler. This is the dark, and then I will also use the light. For my horse, I used some light Smoky Slate. I just put a little color here and there, so just do what you like. And I also used it for my snow. This is the light secret C. Cloud cover. And this is the light cloud cover. I missed a little spot here. So this is just that Smoky Slate. And we have a little bit of flesh tone, so that's what I'm using that 700 for, which is in the natural tones. You can see I'm just kind of overlapping all of those colors until I like it. And then I will take, this is the color lifter, and I'm going to blend where that color ends, just to give it a little bit of a transition. So this just pushes the color through. It's just diluted solution, the alcohol solution that's in the marker. So it just dilutes that color. Now we're going to die cut this, but I'm going to color my barn first. So the barn I just did quickly, and I used mostly the cherry cobbler. You could use a watercolor pencil or a Stampin' Up marker if you don't want it to blend. This dries really smooth, so I like the finish. I'm not worrying about if it's perfect. It will dry nice and smooth once I cover it with the light and blend those edges. Now, some of the details are really hard to get to and make make it realistic. So I'm just coloring it the best I can. And sometimes I just barely dot on the color. It's just to give you the illusion it's filled in because it's kind of a tight space for this marker. And everything's not drawn exactly the same size, so just going to do the best. The Stampin' Right markers, which are the same ink formula as our ink pads, it has a finer tip, so if you have those, you may like to use that better. I'm going to come in with the light cherry cobbler, and I'm just going to fill in. I'm going to do the same thing with that light Smoky Slate that I did with this one. And I'm just going to add some onto the ground here, around under my trees, along my barn, and on the roof. And I'm going to use that color lifter again and kind of smooth out where I want that edge. This is kind of like snow here. Just helps kind of ground everything. Be careful not to hit your cherry gobbler because it will kind of smear and bleed that red out into your gray. And then I want to add a little bit of that gray onto the bottom of these trees. Help ground those in our snow. So I'm just putting that light Smoky Slate on, and then I'm taking that color lifter and I'm just kind of smoothing it and diluting the color. I want it to be fuzzy and not just a hard line. Let that dry before I stamp on it. And then we're going to die cut this, and this one I don't need to ground a whole lot because most of it's getting covered up. So I'm just going to do it on these back trees, and I'm going to make a few little snow piles. Now this will not, should not react with your, if you're using Stampin' Up! Classic inks. They are water-based, so it should just smooth out that blend color and not hurt your images when you do it up close. All right, I'm going to bring in my cut and emboss machine. So if you do not want to see the partial die technique, feel free to jump ahead to the card assembly. So to do this technique, I'm going to use the dies that coordinate with the Christmas barn. I'm going to put this down on here, and I'm going to look at where I want it to cut. So I have to be careful because it does cut out these little areas, as well as this one right here. So I don't want it to cut these, so I'm going to stop my plate before those. So I'm just lining this up with my image, and then I'm going to use a piece of tape to hold it down. So this is just Post-it tape. It's low-tack tape. And then I'm going to put my top plate on here, and I'm going to make sure that I don't go below a certain point. And it's going to give me a partial die cut. So it's only going to cut where I have this plate. And where it stops, this it will not cut. And don't worry, it can sound, it might fly, your plate might fly out. I held on to mine. Don't worry about that. It's not hurting anything. All right, now let's get this out of the way. When I take this off, you'll see it's only cut that portion out. Might not have got it down as far as I wanted. We'll use the scissors on that. But I'm just going to use a pair of my scissors and cut out the rest. So I have my layer here that goes on top. And I'm just cutting around and meeting up with that die cut, where the die cut ended. And then this little piece, oops, I'll just trim it off. Okay, so this layers on this front panel like this. So you can adjust this however you want. So I stamped this one a little higher, and that's okay. You can add in some more snowbanks or extra trees or however you want that to look. I'm just going to add in maybe a little bit more of that snowy look down here. Maybe some here. And then we're going to stamp over top of that. So don't be afraid to adjust things, no matter what stage you're in of your card. If you want a little more of something, you can add it. Okay. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to stamp my greetings here. So this doesn't have anything stamped on there. I'm stamping my greetings in the Secret C. And I used a couple of retired things that were just some of my favorites. So this one says, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." And this one has a Merry Christmas that I liked. Okay. Oops, this one. Let's see. Okay. And I'm going to do Christmas and then stamp the Merry. Put this all the way toward the bottom. And then I'll fit the Merry on. That's our middle panel. I'm just layering those out. Now let's stamp this. This one's going to say, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." Now we're ready to assemble. And I'm going to let that dry for just a second. Some of the darker inks take just a minute to kind of soak in. So let's assemble. We're going to just adhere these panels to each section. I prefer the liquid glue, but use whatever adhesive you like. Now on these, because it's a trifold, I do not add dimensionals. If you're not mailing, you may want to add as much dimension as you want, but I like them to be able to go through the mail with without the extra postage. So I'm just adhering mine flat. I also don't have any embellishments, again, for the same reason, but if you're hand delivering your card, you could add some sparkly embellishments, or you could use Wink of Stella if you have that and you want a little sparkle. Okay, so this panel is going to go on top of this one, and I just like that layered look. And when you layer these, you just want to make sure that your 3 sides line up. Now, if you want to write a personal message, there's no inside to this card. It's more for display. But if you want to write a personal message, you can adhere a piece of white cardstock on the very back of your card, and you could make it, let's see, I would make it 3 3/4 by 5 or smaller, or you could do another one of these die cuts and layer that on. So there's our 3 panels. Now we're going to use our connectors to attach them together. So I just take these and I fold them on my score line. You want to make sure you burnish that edge really well. This is the moving part of your card. And I'm going to put this in about the middle of the panel. And this one, these two, fold like this. So I'm using the mountain out like this. I'm just going to put a little adhesive on this, and I do not want to go to my score line. And then I'm going to lay this on top. I'm going to put it almost to the score line. Oops. Don't worry about that. I'll use my adhesive eraser on that. I accidentally moved my panel. Every once in a while, we have an oops. So this just helps pull that adhesive back off the cardstock. Okay. Now I'm going to apply adhesive over here. You don't want to go all the way to the score line. I'm going to turn this over. We're going to fold this. And then I want to line up my 2 rectangles here. They need to be exactly the same. And then press down. So there's our first 2 panels. Now the second panel and the third panel folds this way. So the mountain is down. So I'm going to put adhesive on this side. Again, you don't want it to go all the way to the score line. And I'm going to adhere this. And I'm just trying to get it about the middle so it has even space on either end. I'm not all the way to the score line. Now this piece is going to get adhered. I'm going to lay it right on top of that other rectangle. I'm going to apply adhesive on this side. Make sure this is straight. Oops. And then you're going to fold this over and adhere it. And that is how we make the trifold card. So now it's all ready to go, and whoever receives it can put it up on their mantle. So I hope you've enjoyed this card. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me or comment on the video. You can also find more details over on my blog, and that link is down in the description. Thank you all for joining me for this card. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day. Take care.